Recording? Yeah. So this is the first time we've done this podcast. It's a pleasure to have with me Dr Sahota, and you work at the Pelham Medical Practice.
That's right, yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have noticed this recently, but Dr Sahota had a really good article that recently went into the Kent Messenger?
Grayson and Kent, yeah.
Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that and your angle?
Yeah, I mean, I regularly write health articles for the Kent Messenger and the Gravesend Messenger, and you know, occasionally go on BBC Radio Kent talking about obesity, particularly childhood obesity. My passion has always been about health prevention and promotion. Mm-hmm. So this particular article was on exercise, and the reason I wanted to write it is that, you know, many people think that once they start taking their medication, that's it, it's going to save them. You know, whether they have a heart attack, you know, they're on 6 or 7 tablets, diabetes, stroke, whatever. And the problem is that there is no substitute for exercise. You can take all the pills in the world, but if you don't exercise, if you have a heart attack, your arteries are going to block up again. If you have a stroke, your chances of stroke are going to be much, much more. So there is no substitute, and this is what the message I wanted to get out to everyone, was that you have to do, the body was meant to move. And obviously there's so many benefits to it, and I think with the increasing rates of diabetes and dementia especially, you know, we've got an aging population and rates of dementia are through the roof, and there's plenty of evidence that keeping active, exercising will prevent that. And that was really the main message I want to get through to people, is that medication will only go so far, you know, 10, 15%, but exercise will help you, will always 100% help you.
When we're looking at our patients, and you've mentioned to me the word holistic before, and when we're trying to be as holistic as possible, we're always trying to look to what is the pillar or what is the keystone that if we correct, we can have the biggest effect. Now, when you're looking at this problem, which is a growing health epidemic where people are eating the wrong foods and not exercising enough, what would you say are the key pillars in our society that are holding up those habits? Is it down to culture or education? Or?
I think, I mean, if, you know, I live in a village called Mepham, and obviously I work in Gravesend, and you go to the schools in Mepham and they look at the people, and they are far healthier, they're fitter, they eat healthy. You move, as soon as I'm in Gravesend and I walk through the town centre, you've got all these fast food places, and the rates of child obesity are huge. I think Gravesend and Dartford, I think something like 3rd or 4th in the national, you know, in the United Kingdom. So a lot of it, I think, it has to be is the education and the environment. When you've got fast food places all around you, and that just triggers off cravings. And education is vitally important. So if you're growing up in an environment where everybody else is overweight and inactive, you're going to learn those kind of bad habits, unfortunately. And then when you've got, you know, McDonald's, KFC, all these, you know, fast foods and these sweets you sell for 50p, those habits get ingrained, and they're very, very difficult. So I think the environment and education is a massive part to play.
Now, when we're looking specifically at, say, if we do take kind of Gravesend and Mepham as like a petri dish, and we say what are the main differences between them, when I look at business and as they say fast food or sweet shops, they are businesses. They're always going to be where the demand is highest. So have you come across any reasons as to why you think certain areas or certain populations of people might demand these establishments more than others?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the Kent Health and Wellbeing Board, and one of the things I suggested to everybody is that, you know, there needs to be a distance of fast food places, you know, from schools, because, you know, as soon as you come out of school, you know, you go past them. And exactly what you said, where the demand is, you know, institutions will set up. McDonald's, they're not silly. They know they're going to go to kind of, you know, they'll open up in Glasgow or whatever. Scotland's got very high rates of obesity and things. So it's just, it's a difficult one. But I think a lot has to do with, I suppose, education and money. I think poorer places that are deprived, will always be hit hardest, whether it comes to the standard of food and everything else. And it's a shame. And for that poor kid trying to, you know, come out of that environment, it is difficult. It is difficult. And that's why I think for me, schools have got a big part to play, and I wish they would take more of a role, and they are slowly going to. I mean, there was this teacher in Kent, and I think she banned fizzy drinks, and then she banned crisps, and she said, they were only allowed on a Friday, which is brilliant. I think you need, headmasters, headmistresses, schools. They need to be more powerful. They need to just make a massive stand. I think this kind of Daily Mile that's been promoted all around England. I think who's a tennis player, Andy Murray. Yeah, so he's kind of pushing as well. We know that if kids are more active, their grades are going to be better. And I think, especially for like places like Gravesend, for a kid to escape, I think the schools have to be vital. And GP surgeries are very, very busy, but they're places that families will always go to. And I think, for me, GP surgeries should be promoting health promotion and things. So I think the NHS needs to take a bigger role, and they are slowly, but it's very slow.
I definitely agree with you, and I think with what you're talking about, and the way that you're talking about it, you're talking about a real multifaceted approach to people's healthy habits. And from the people that we've seen here, we see a huge distribution of a huge variety of people coming from all different kinds of backgrounds. And the one thing that we've noticed is that when we do have people who are fit and healthy, a lot of the time their choices aren't necessarily always a conscious, rational decision to be healthy. It's something that they've culturally been indoctrinated into at a young age. And one thing that you've touched on when it comes to schools being more active and the NHS being more active, these hubs, these community hubs being more active in constantly promoting healthy lifestyle, I think that there has to be almost a cultural shift, and that if we do pound education and we do indoctrinate people almost by default into healthy routine, then hopefully, like you said, we'll be able to create a shift in people's habits. I've had a few questions come through that you guys have answered online, and Dr. Sahota, if it's right, I'm going to read through a few of these and we'll take your opinion on them.
Sure.
Do you think employers should be doing more to encourage people to exercise and keep active? Working for an ambulance trust, I do not feel that there's enough emphasis on my own health and lifestyle, yet I am relied upon to deliver advice about it. Things, for example, such as cheaper gym memberships, incentives to walk, such right to work, etc. This is a question by paramedic Lewis Atkinson. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. Unfortunately, the paramedics that I've encountered, because of the shift patterns, and it creates havoc with their lifestyle, their health, and they do have higher rates of diabetes. So anyone, like taxi drivers, lorry drivers, paramedics, unfortunately are at a higher risk of it, and it's important that employers do invest, in their health, and a healthier workforce will be less sickness days. So, employers don't really understand that. If we invest in our workforce, provide them with cheaper gym membership, it'll pay us back. So I feel for Lewis here, because I know quite a few paramedics, and I know quite a lot of them. They are trying to give health advice to people, but for themselves, they are overweight and they don't really exercise. Not all of them, but part of it, I think it's to do with your working hours, you're sitting for long periods, and the fast food that you guys grab at night where you haven't got time to eat. And I think it is difficult, and you do need to kind of focus on that. So the NHS is slowly playing a part.
So would you therefore say that, do you feel like it's the responsibility of our health professionals, our health leaders, to set a good example?
Yeah, I mean, Simon Stevens, who heads the NHS, he is slowly trying to. I mean, I think he was talking about free Zumba classes and things. So it is slowly getting out there. But the NHS is such a big monster to try and do anything. It just everything trickles down too slowly. And the problem is we haven't got time. This diabetes epidemic and it's here, it's now, and we need something radical, and I don't know what the answer is, and we were talking about the multifaceted approach, but something needs to happen, and it needs to happen quick, really.
Going, let's say if it's too late to start now, but we need to still start planning for the future. if, say, you were to go back to, say, post-World War II, where rates of diabetes were at an all-time low, people weren't able to overeat, and slowly after that we had this agricultural revolution where food was now being produced in almost like a surplus, which is maybe say like a reaction to the fact that we had to ration our food at that time. What would you have changed, say 40, 50 years ago, to prevent us from entering this epidemic now? So mate, rather than say, right, this is what should have been done, what could we have done?
Yeah, it's difficult. You know, I mean, back in those days, I think sugar was a treat. It was, given as a treat, and we were active enough to burn it off. And then, unfortunately, it comes down to money, doesn't it? Businesses need to make money. Food makes a lot of money. And if you get, let's take Coca-Cola. I mean, they've got the whole world addicted to Coke. I mean, and sugar, it creates a lot of money, and it's a difficult one. But going back, I mean, it's, with hindsight, I think, combination of that, just technology itself, we all know with cars, iPads, iPhones, all that is restricting us from moving naturally. For me, the way, and the other biggest thing for me is refined foods, refined carbohydrates. People don't understand, they need more education about that. And bringing in the white bread and the cornflakes, which rapidly increase your blood sugar. If we knew the health risks associated with those kind of foods, they should have never been brought forward. But I would definitely have hit all the food industries. I would have hit them harder with tax, knowing the danger that these foods do.
I think that one thing that we definitely need to highlight as well. Because the way, unfortunately, modern day society looks at obesity and poor health is that it's a very individualistic problem, i.e. if you're overweight, it's your issue, it's your problem. If you've got diabetes, it's your problem. But generally, when we look at the data and when we look at trends, we see that it's really a human problem rather than an individual problem. And the fact is that when we look at places like, for example, Okinawa is a good example in Japan, who used to have a heavily plant-based diet, and they used to have the lowest mortality rate in the world, they lived the longest in the world. But very soon, since an introduction of McDonald's and KFC to Okinawa, you see that their lifestyle changes, you see their life expectancy massively reduce. So, as you're saying, we almost have to be able to engineer our own future and engineer what is going to be good for people rather than, I suppose, what people want.
Absolutely. There's another thing there's another article I wrote when we were talking about the kind of refined foods and things. And this is, the big message I want to get out to families and parents and also grandparents as well. And there's a quote that I wrote in one of the previous articles. When you're giving your kids, the treats at school, at parties, and all the refined foods thing, I want you guys to remember this, you're killing your kids with kindness, because the kid wants it, which is fine and things like that. You've already got an overweight, obese kid, and there are kids now who 8, 9 years old, 10 years old with type 2 diabetes related to their obesity, and it's a kind of, this reward that you're giving the child, it's not a reward. You are laying the foundation for diabetes, for heart disease, for dementia, for everything. And again, I read a recent newspaper article about children having hip replacements, earlier because they're so obese.
Congenital dysplasia?
No. Because of obesity, they're going to have earlier hip replacements.
Okay.
I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah.
Big deal.
And correlations between that and arthritis elsewhere in the body.
Absolutely. And I think just people. We need to educate. I mean, I need to educate. I mean, I'm always educating, talking to my family as well. About my children go to parties and things like that. It's fine as treats now and again, but it seems to be every weekend there's a treat, every day.
Especially because there's that side of things when you're talking about treating children, but then there's the other problem, which is appeasing children. For example, a lot of parents who want their kids to quieten down, they give them a sweet to quieten down. They want them to do their homework, they give them a sweet to do their homework. So it's not a reward technically would be given after they do something good, rather than appeasement where they're literally bargaining with their children with food to. And it's almost like, you know, like you said, there's killing with kindness, and then on the other side of the spectrum, you're essentially placing your own convenience over your child's health, which is another issue.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, we've talked about how big a beast the NHS is, but how big a beast maternal nature is or paternal nature is. That's a whole other thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
Another question that we've had, so from my mum, Beverly Reid, I'm concerned that if I go on blood pressure medication, I will be on them for my whole life. Do you have any suggestions?
Most doctors will say, once I start a tablet, you're gonna take it for life. That should not be said, and that's not the right attitude. And that doesn't give people a chance to use lifestyle to reverse things. Lifestyle can reverse diabetes, blood pressure, everything. And I think doctors need to be re-educated. You know, when they say, right, you're going to take this life, it doesn't have to be that way. So if we talk about blood pressure, right? So the first thing would be obviously, for me, again, exercise. It's known, if you do a brisk walk, half an hour later, check your blood pressure, it's lower. We know, you know, so regular exercise is always, you know, and different time. Every exercise is good, but just a brisk 20-minute walk is adequate. We know that. We know weight loss, you know, will help. And I'm controversially a big fan of lowering your carbs, having a more of a low carb diet. We don't, you know, for me, the way I see carbs, they are energy foods. When you were young and your body was like a Ferrari, fine, you know, it's great. But you know, as your body changes and more of it, you know, it's an old Escort now. You don't need as many carbs and things.
Why was that controversial? Why is that controversial? Because there's data to support a low carb diet. I've seen data to support low carb diet and basically low insulin producing diets, so even plant-based diets, high fiber diets are shown to be quite good at managing diabetes. But why has that been controversial?
It's controversial because dietitians, the Eat Well plate, they're saying a third of it has to be carbohydrates. So you go, I'm the diabetes lead for the CCG, so I attended the local diabetes education course, and they're telling you to eat carbohydrates there. They're saying a third of your plate has to be carbohydrates, and I'm thinking, no, they don't. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they also had biscuits there as well as snacks. Can you believe it? Diabetes education, you know, and
there were snacks there for the people attending. Right, that's mad.
It's crazy. It's crazy. No healthy snacks, biscuits. But I mean, it's controversial because of that. Because dietitians, in nutritionists, more dietitians believe that a third of the plate is based on the Eat Well plate, that you need carbohydrates for energy and you need to eat 3 times a day. You know, for me.
And this is testimony to what you talked about before, which is that unfortunately with the information that is being put into the NHS, we might not see it 17, 20 years later.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And that's literally what.
Yeah, it's slowly true. So obviously weight loss. So you know, if your mum can reduce the carbs, do the exercise, that's the exercise and the weight loss will lower her blood pressure. I'm also a big fan of food as well. You know, eating the right kind of food. So. Obviously, your breath might stink, but garlic lowers blood pressure. You can take garlic pills, but it lowers blood pressure. Beetroot is another one. So I think if you eat real unprocessed foods, real food, there's lots and lots of vital nutrients in there. You know, that will lower blood pressure.
That's one thing we always hear at the clinic when especially people coming into us for weight loss, is they basically argue or they'll express how expensive healthy food is. And my answer to them is, well, it depends what you're buying. And what I mean by that is that when we look at the UK in general, the UK does not have a calorie problem. You will not see in the news someone starving to death.
No.
But what we do have in the UK is possibly more of a vitamin and mineral deficiency overall. So people are more likely to get their daily, recommended daily allowance of calories than they are vitamins and nutrients. So if you were to go to McDonald's, for example, for £1.50, calories are very cheap, but for £1.50, vitamins and nutrients are very expensive. So creating that shift we find for our patients in focusing on buying fuel for their body's needs rather than fuel for their waistline or fuel for energy, we find that to be that we see a lot of people getting epiphanies when they hear that.
That's a really important point. and this is the way I sometimes talk to my patients as well. They've got to see food as, feeding their body, energizing their body, not as like a tasty snack or a treat. And like you said, these cravings. And once you get that shift and you understand that food is supposed to energize your body, then then people kind of do get it. And the nutrients that most people are deficient in, I'll go through. Iron is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think a lot of people need to take vitamin D. We're very, very low in vitamin D. B12, particularly as we get older, we're low in B12. Another nutrient is magnesium. So they're the essential ones that a lot of people are very, very low in.
Just so people can know, because I think vitamin and mineral deficiencies, they can go below the radar for a long period of time. Can you tell us about the symptoms of these nutritional deficiencies, even if they're slight? What someone might experience?
I mean, let's start with B12. B12, you can go to your doctor and get a blood test, but even then, so a B12, I think the range is from 150 to 900. So if your doctor tells you your B12 is 160, that still may be too low for you. You might have been running at 500, 600 for ages. So you've got to understand there's a range there. But B12, so B12, you get memory loss, you get pins and needles in your feet, fatigue, tiredness. So that it's a very, very important. I think a lot of patients with especially chronic fatigue syndrome, they could benefit with extra B12 injections and things. And I do give them to my patients, and that helps. But particularly pins and needles, numbness and memory loss and fatigue. And there's certain drugs that lower B12. So the drugs that reduce acid, they're called proton pump inhibitors, and loads of people are on them for acid reflux and indigestion, partly because of the diet and everything else. But these omeprazole and lansoprazole, they lower B12, as does metformin, which is a common drug for diabetes. Iron is another one. Again, that's going to be tiredness, fatigue, hair loss. So if your hair is thinning, but iron kind of pretty much affects everything. And vitamin D is a big one, and I think many people they're low in it because we don't go outside, but we obviously need it for our bones. Everybody knows that, but I think there's more evidence coming that we need it for a strong immune system. It really supports a very, very strong immune system, and I think especially if you're taking vitamin D throughout the winter, it may protect you from colds and things.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it. Magnesium. So magnesium, I've found quite a few people with headaches, migraine, are low in magnesium, and if you give them magnesium, they have a massive reduction in their migraine frequency. So and also if you're low in magnesium, you're a bit twitchy. Your muscles are a bit twitchy. You can't relax a bit. So they're the some of the symptoms of magnesium.
It's interesting that you bring up vitamin B12 specifically. I think vitamin B12 and calcium because of their symptoms of deficiencies, a lot of pins and needles. We see a lot of patients who will come into us because they think they've got nerve root irritation, and then you dig a little bit deeper and you go into their diet and they're getting no greens, no vegetables. So a lot of the time, if the nerve root irritation seems a little bit suspect, it doesn't seem like they've got too many mechanical signs pointing to nerve root irritation. A lot of the time we will refer them to the doctor, but then we'll ask them to take a multivitamin, or we'll ask them to increase their greens intake, and a lot of the time they get better just from slight changes to the diet. So a lot of these things can go.
So I'm a big fan of trying to get the vitamins like sublingually, which means underneath your tongue. So vitamin D, there's a spray called Deluxe. You spray it, and that goes directly into your bloodstream.
Right.
B12 as well. You can get it. I think you can get it from Amazon sublingual. So again, it goes directly into your bloodstream. So it's far more effective.
And is D3, which is oil based, is that right? That's more effective than.
With D3, yeah, that's usually vitamin D3 is the usual one that we all say. I think Healthspan do one where I think K is important as well. So vitamin D3 with vitamin K is important for both those minerals. But again, it's a shame that we have to supplement, but we could improve our diet and get it. Yeah.
Next question. So, right, if I have a family history of heart disease and stroke, does that mean that I'm also destined to have them?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you've got to look back and see what family history means. If you've got very, very fit people who've had heart attacks at 45, under 50, maybe, then you may have, but that's quite rare. We have so many patients, and it says they've got a family history of heart disease. When you look back, unfortunately, it's been related to smoking, diabetes, obesity. That does not mean family history. It just means that person hasn't looked after themselves. But if you're looking at very fit people who are getting heart attacks, then yes.
I think that we've spoken about culture a few times here. When I mean culture, I don't mean culture relating to anything other than your family culture. That is the most important thing, I think, here, is in terms of what culture your family are passing down from generation to generation. And if your family culture is to eat a certain way, to smoke a certain amount, to drink a certain amount, to not exercise, then that's something that definitely needs to be changed. There's the way that we look at genes. You got your genes, which you won't actually notice the effect of them. You notice the effect of what's called the phenotype. So the phenotype is basically the expression of that gene in the environment that you're in. So, for example, if I was kept in a box that didn't see daylight, my skin tone would be fairly indistinguishable from someone who is maybe of European descent. But it's my exposure to light that enables me to express that phenotype. Now, when we're looking at genes that are turned on and turned off by diet, if you take the poor dietary choices and if you take the poor exercise choices out of the equation, as you've said, that gene will potentially not be turned on. And that's the difference, like you said, between family history and it being more down to the environment that you're placing your body in. So it brings us on to the next question as well, which is, no matter what I do, I cannot help but put on weight. What do you suggest? Is it my genes?
No, I don't agree with that. I mean, there are people that are obviously naturally heavier. Yes, you do get that. I don't deny that. But for me, I still believe physics is physics, and you still, if you expend energy and you eat the right foods, there's no reason. In terms of weight, and you probably know more than me, Elliott, about this, is that you don't always have to focus on weight and the body mass. Because when you put on muscle, that it's more to do with. I think you probably be better at answering this question.
So we're talking about body composition. So what we're saying is that it doesn't really matter what the entire weight is, it depends where the weight is. So for example, if you are 100 kilos, if you weigh 100 kilos, if you're 30% body fat, that's not good. But if you're 100 kilos and you're, say, 5 to 10% body fat, you're basically like that's what